Hello and welcome to Analog Insights. Today's episode is all about how to hunt for film cameras in Japan. I asked myself this question last year when I traveled to Tokyo for the very first time, and of course I had a mental list of cameras that I was curious about and that I potentially want to purchase, Japanese only models for instance, and things that I had heard that can be obtained there. I had also heard about a lot of stores, but to be honest I didn't really know where to start and figured this might be an interesting topic to discuss here on the channel. And the best person to talk to when it comes to that is, of course, Bellamy Hunt, the original Japan camera hunter. And he was kind enough to sit down with me on a Sunday for an interview. So without further ado, let's dive in there and take a closer look at this topic and how to hunt for film cameras in Japan. Hi Bellamy, thank you so much for taking the time. We had a conversation before, and this time the topic is how to hunt for film cameras in Japan. And I thought, okay, who else to talk to except for you? You are the true expert. You are the original Japan camera hunter with almost 20 years of experience. And you also recently released a book. You just published a book, this one here, Film Camera Zen, which I have here, a guide to finding the perfect film camera. And also recently you announced that you will offer tours for visitors of Tokyo to basically help them hunt for cameras. And this is precisely what I would have needed, and this is why we're sitting here, because I found it quite interesting thinking about my first trip to Japan. How can I hunt reasonably for film cameras? So before we dive into that, I would be curious how you started almost 20 years ago with Japan camera hunter, and how the market has changed.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Max. It's nice to see you again. It would have been great to be able to show you around when you were here. How I got started with Japan Camera Hunter, that's a long story. It's actually in the book, or a condensed version of it is in the book, but going back from the very early days of when I sort of took my father's camera, but that wasn't the true... when I discovered I wanted to be Japan Camera Hunter, that came when I was working for a Japanese photographic supply company. And I was sourcing cameras, and I realized how much I enjoyed doing it. And, one thing led to another. There was some changes in the company. I realized that I had an opportunity to basically do this sourcing and buying and selling cameras thing full time, and I took it. I didn't take it too seriously at first either. It was just a bit of fun and just finding the cameras that I wanted until I realized I actually had to sell some of them. And then, it sort of, it very quickly snowballed into something much bigger and became my, what I am, what I do, and a major part of my life as well. So, and how it was back then, completely different to now. Back then, as I say, I didn't take it so seriously in terms of seeing it as a business. It was more a bit of fun. So I had far less responsibilities, so I didn't care if I made any money or not. It was, now it's a business, it's a job. I have a family to support, and so a lot has changed. Yeah.
And looking at the market, and we briefly touched on that when we met in Tokyo back then, you kind of mentioned on the side, okay, the market has shifted completely, the Japanese film camera market. All the sellers are doing a different thing. Can you describe that a little bit to the audience?
Yeah, so when I started doing this, back 2010, 11-ish, there wasn't really anybody else doing... there were a few people, but there wasn't a lot of people doing this. If you went to a camera fair, you didn't see a lot of Chinese or overseas traders. You saw a handful, and the shops were largely unmolested, as it were, because there wasn't as many tourists, and there wasn't as many people searching for things, and there was still a lot of cool little sweet spots which have now gone. These tiny little camera shops. And so it was a lot of fun. You could spend the day tripping around the city and just finding lots of cool stuff. I mean, I remember going into one store and they had Ricoh GR1s, 1Ss and 1s on the shelf, and I think I bought about 15 of them. In one stop, I bought everything I thought was good. And I bought all of those, and then I immediately got on the train and I went to Ricoh, which was in Ginza, and the Ricoh Service Centre, which was near the Kabuki Theatre. And I took them all there and sent them in to be CLA'd and refurbished or whatever, which was cheap, really cheap, like so cheap, and would take them maybe 2 weeks. And get them all back 2 weeks later, and then just sell the lot, bam, just they were gone, and you can't do that anymore. That doesn't exist. The Ricoh service center's closed, that camera shop's gone, and Ricoh GR1s are like $500, $800 each. I think they were $85 each.
Incredible.
So it was a lot. It was a lot different. It came at a time when people were shifting over to digital as well. And so people were discarding their film stuff. So there were bargains to be had. And there wasn't this resurgence of film. At that point, a lot of people felt like, film's done. It's over, film's dead. So there was a lot of stuff on the shelves, a lot of stuff in the shops, and there wasn't really anybody buying it. So the prices were low. The quality was pretty good. And as that's changed, I love the resurgence of film photography. I less love the fact that it's become a lot harder to find the good things. They're less available now because a lot of people have got onto, wanting or understanding what they want from a film camera. So, and the customers were different as well back then. A lot of them were still diehards who were holding on. They knew exactly what they wanted. You didn't need to explain anything. It was, I need this and this and this and this, and done. And now it's much more, can you tell me what this is? If this is any good, how would you compare it to this one? What would be they want advice, So yeah, quite a lot has changed.
And you mentioned that to me on site, and that kind of stuck to me, that back then nobody was on eBay, right?
Yeah.
And you had these small shops, and they were basically hiding the great valuable goods that they had in Tokyo for those to be found.
Hardly any of them even had websites,
Yeah, and now you have these perfectly described cameras in every detail. You have sometimes sellers providing videos and so on. And that, of course, makes your job harder, right?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of competition. There's so much more competition now. I remember noticing it the first time when I was at a camera fair in Ginza. And I had 3, maybe 4 guys approach me at the camera fair. And they were all eBay sellers, and they all gave me their card and said, "Hey, can we work together?" And I was like, "Thanks for the card, and thank you. Okay, I'll think about it." But ultimately, no, I don't work with eBay sellers. But that was to me like, oh, something's coming. Here comes the oncoming train, because all of a sudden the shelves were just, you go into places and the shelves were stripped. You had to be there first thing on a Monday morning, otherwise you weren't getting anything. And that changed a lot. It happened very quickly. And now you've got tons and tons and tons of eBay sellers, absolutely loads. And the big stores are on there as well. But interestingly enough, despite all of this and all of the modernity and, the acceptance of change, a lot of the stores still don't have English websites, will not ship overseas, and won't even entertain a phone call in English, which is kind of where I still step in,
Yeah, and that I found really interesting to me as a complete newbie being in Tokyo and getting a little bit of tips, but also just navigating with Google Maps. The first surprise is you enter film camera store in Google Maps and you're surrounded by stores and dots on the map, which would never happen to you in anywhere else in the world.
Anywhere else in the world, yeah.
And then you have the task of kind of, as you described, navigating through the big stores where you feel, okay, highly saturated market, very expensive. You don't make a deal here, a good one. And then all the junk that is basically placed where you know it's really junk, so you have to repair it yourself. And then the small stores that are kind of hidden and in between where you are able to make a bargain. And at least to me, somebody who had a small list of items that I wanted to purchase, it was already difficult comparing for those few items the different prices at different stores and then finding the one in best condition. So that was my small hunting experience.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine how difficult it must be for you at scale.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the stuff nowadays, it's changed as well. You see, back then I used to hit the streets. I used to, put the leather on the floor and really sort of hit as many shops as I could and walk around and find the things. And I don't tend to do that very much anymore. I realized very quickly you had to work smarter, and I gained, over time I gained relationships with a lot of the stores that I trusted so that I could either check their website or give them a call, or they would call me and say, hey, we've got this, or have you got this? And they would know my standard. Or they still do. They know my standard. So they would say, oh, yeah, we've got one, but you won't take it. Or, yeah, we've got one. Do you want us to send it to you? And then I have it sent to me. Rather than going there, getting on the train for an hour each way, going to the store. I mean, it's nice to get out, but when you've got other things to do, time is money at the end of the day.
And looking at your own journey and looking back at all the cameras that you purchased and sold, do you have highlights and lowlights that you remember?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, plenty. I mean, I've traveled the world looking for cameras and have found cameras. And there have been highlights. Finding some, really rare lenses, really rare cameras. I found an Elcan 66 in number 3 as well in the Philippines. Sean Flynn's camera. Now that one was bittersweet. It was a highlight and a low light. Because it was Sean Flynn's camera, it's a remarkable piece of photographic history. But at the same time, the person that I dealt with turned out to be untrustworthy and had made all of these promises. The buyer had made all of these promises about the charity work he was going to do with it and then put it in a museum and all of this stuff on the proviso. I would sell to him and then I sold to him and he immediately goes and flips it in an auction, which upset the family as well. So that was a low point for me. That upset me. Because I felt like that camera needed to be done better justice, But there's always been ups and downs. I've had... I dropped an M3. This was years and years and years and years ago. Didn't even drop it very far, but just destroyed the viewfinder. And that was it. It's dead. It's just... that from that moment on, it's dead, and that was heartbreaking for me. And it was mine as well. It wasn't a customer's. I've never dropped a customer's camera, never. Proud of that. I've only managed to drop my own ones repeatedly.
Oh, God.
I dropped my MP6.
So we should send you some straps or so.
Yeah. But for the most part, I've been very fortunate. I think perhaps the film project I worked on, which name I might not be able to really mention properly, that was that has been a bit of a low light because I really wanted that to happen, but that's that was another project, but at the same time, no, I've been very fortunate because I've been able to do what I've wanted to do and enjoy what I wanted to do. ultimately to make a living, which is more than a lot of people can hope for. So I consider myself very lucky.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to that situation of, okay, somebody from abroad coming to Tokyo, hunting for film cameras, what would you recommend? What are the recommendations you can give in good conscience? What are some pieces of advice?
Sure. So don't come here expecting to get the bargains, because those have gone. I do get a lot of emails from people saying, where should I go? What should I do? You know, there's maps online now, including mine. On my website, there's a guide to Tokyo. But it's really hard to keep those updated because so many new little stores pop up like fungi, you know, just pop, pop, pop. And so it's hard to keep track of them. And you've got the major mega store, Kitamura, a map.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I say to people, yeah, okay, go and check out Kitamura and map, but just go and check them out because the prices in there will blow your socks off. They're non-negotiable. You know, that's how it is. And then go and start actually looking, you know, because map and Kitamura are basically showcases, you know. And then you can actually go and start checking out the smaller stores where they're much more amenable. And if you've got good manners and you present yourself well and you come in and you're polite and you're friendly, they'll let you look at a camera, they'll let you check your camera, and if maybe they'll even give you a discount, you know, who knows. If they want to get it sold, they sure will. You know, don't be too pushy about asking for one, but at the same time, don't be shy. You know, yeah, and just go and enjoy it. I think because there's an expectation that you're still gonna. I still get people mailing me and saying, "Hey, you know, I want to find a brand new in the box, never been used, this Nikon or something," or you know, and it's, man, that camera hasn't been like that since 1972. You know, I can't. There is no that doesn't exist. I'm sorry, but hey, you want to find a Canon rangefinder? Yeah, there's loads of them. Loads. You just got to search through until you find the one you like. So make a day of it. Enjoy it. Make it fun. You can't really expect to zip in and zip out. You know, make a day of it. Go and really find what you want to find. And it's one of the highlights of Tokyo.
And I agree. And for me, looking for exactly that, a Canon rangefinder, it was a very rewarding experience. But then I still learned a lot of things along the way. And you just hinted at that kind of how to approach the sellers, how to be polite, how to speak a very clean, clear English, be very kind and so on, and respectful. And also what I had to learn the hard way, ideally you bring cash, right? Because the cash price will always be lower than what you pay.
Absolutely, cash price. They don't like credit cards because of the fees. So if you turn up with, you know, cold hard cash, they do like that very much. You will probably almost certainly get a discount for carrying cash. And as you say, you know, don't be, I said before, a lot of them don't have websites in English or don't deal with overseas clients. And that's not because they don't speak English. They do. They just don't want the hassle of all the paperwork and all of that. You know, it's because it is a hassle. If you go into the stores, a lot of the staff in them do speak English. They're pretty well versed with tourists. So, you know, you don't have to do that British thing where you just shout words louder. You know? How much for the camera? You don't need to do any of that. You know? Actually, one of the guys in Sukiya Camera, he speaks fluent German, so yeah.
Any other pieces of advice that you have instead of, in addition to the cash and all?
So the cash, manners, no food and drink. I mean, that should go without saying, but you would really be surprised how many people just saunter into a camera shop with a coffee. And read the signs. Read the signs. There are signs in a lot of stores that say either this is a sale item or a consignment item, and they are in English, or they'll say, please don't touch, or no photography. Just read the signs. There is one store I know of that has now become a private members only store. So there's no walk-ins, and there's a big sign on the window that says, in English, sorry, no walk-ins, there's a private store, please don't try to open the door. And there will still be people banging on the door going, hey, let me in. Just there's a sign, just read the sign. And we're cool, because the owner did say to me, how can I make them stop banging on the door? And just make a day of enjoying it. Try and plan a route. I think that's the best way. Follow the train lines, try and plan a route. And maybe, if you find yourself in, a certain area, you think, I can take a walk through this area and this area and this area and get to the next camera store instead of taking the train. And one last piece of advice, don't come and do it in the summer because you'll hate your life.
Because it's way too warm. Yeah.
Way too hot. It's just unreal. Yeah.
And in terms of areas, because as I've indicated, as a complete newbie, I noticed you can find stores in Shibuya, in Ginza, and so on. So where would you go?
Usually to start with, you would go to Shinjuku, and that's on the west side of Shinjuku. There's a lot of stores there. You've got Map, you've got Lemon, you've got the small Kitamura, you've got Camera Box, lots and lots of camera stores there. And then if you go across or under the tracks, you've got the larger Kitamura. And then from there, you've got Nakano, which has Fuji and Kitamura. And then, you can go to Ginza, which just, 10 camera shops there. You've got Yurakucho, which is right next to Ginza. Ueno has less stuff. The northern part of Tokyo has less stuff than it used to. A lot of those have gone. And you've still got a few places on the west side. There's places in Ebisu. There's places in Okachimachi, in Akihabara. So pretty much throw a stone and you'll be able to find, somewhere. But the largest concentration is always going to be in Shinjuku.
Yeah. And to that point earlier where you briefly mentioned, Canon rangefinders, what are the categories that you think are most interesting for visitors to look for? Because just as a layman, I noticed, you can get really high-end Leica, also in high quality, but you pay quite the premium for it.
Yes.
If you're looking for something specific, then the big Kitamura or something like that is actually interesting. And there are a lot of Canon rangefinders, often specific to the Japanese market, like the L2,
Yes.
L3, and so on. And they basically can be had for very little money, cheaper than on eBay, and so on. Yeah, exactly. Here, the VT Deluxe and so on. If you're looking for that, then I think it's a great opportunity. Any other things that?
So there's quite a lot of stuff. You've got the Nikkers, you've got Leo Taxis and the Barnack copies. There's a lot of that stuff. Interestingly, you won't find a lot of Russian stuff. And the Soviet cameras, you don't find a lot of those. But and as well, you don't find a lot of the Chinese, the Great Walls, the Seagulls. You don't find a lot of that stuff. You do find a lot of Zeiss. You find Zeiss rangefinders, Canon rangefinders, Nikon rangefinders. I think, being Japan, and, there's nothing really unique to Japan other than the S4, which was made for the Japanese market, which, there are some of those outside of the Japanese market now. But it's the quality, I think, that you find here. The quality of the Nikon rangefinders and the Canon rangefinders is, I think, just that level higher than the stuff you find overseas. I'm not saying all of it's perfect, because I've seen some real junkers, but yeah, there's a lot of those. And then there's the fixed lens rangefinders, the Canonettes, the the Konicas, the Olympus. The list goes on, There's a lot of those, Yashica, so if you're looking for that sort of thing, this is really the place to be. And compact, mid-range compact cameras. Because everybody wants a T2 and they're going to be expensive wherever you go, but if you're looking for a Konica Gemba or an Auto Boy or something like a Konica Tomato or something, they're here and they're not that expensive.
Okay, these are great pieces of advice. And after looking at all this, now you're offering these tours. Why would somebody say, hey, I just book a tour and have that great experience together with you instead of going out on your own?
I think it's, from what my customers have said, the feedback is that the knowledge that I give them and share with them whilst doing the tour, we go and find maybe something they're looking for, maybe something they're not looking for, but we manage to find it anyway. But it's part of it is the stories along the way, the introductions to the stores, the history, the anecdotes, the jokes, the stories. It makes it for a whole day, as it were, an event. And I can, instead of them going to every single store trying to find a thing they're looking for, I can just say, oh no, we'll find one of those here. So, we'll go straight to there, we'll get that, and then we can go and search for the flight of fancy things that you want to look for. And not just that, the camera knowledge, I guess, that I have, that I can share with people as well. And a lot of the people who take the tours are pretty hardcore nerds as well. So we end up just chatting about that. And often we end up going and searching for watches and pens and all sorts of things because, camera people like nice other stuff. They like things. And so we often end up doing that as well. Which we can do because they're in the same areas,
I really love that, and it sounds like a kind of a memorable experience that you end up having, and this is what you're really purchasing.
Yeah.
And do you also tell people to bring cash if they have something in mind that they want to purchase?
Yeah, absolutely. I do tell them to bring cash if we are going to look for something specific. But at the same time, Japan isn't like it was, 15, 20 years ago, where finding an ATM was a nightmare. It's not like that now. And for the very large purchases, you would usually, what we would do, if we're talking 1 million plus yen, we wouldn't purchase that on that day anyway. We would go into the store and we would make an arrangement with them to say, okay, we'll come back tomorrow for this. And they would hold it for us. So that then, because nobody really, as safe as Japan is, I still wouldn't suggest to people to just walk around with 1 million yen in cash.
Yeah, I get
that. Japan has changed, and I wouldn't walk around with 1 million yen in cash. But yeah, you would come to an arrangement with the store for that anyway, because when you're talking that sort of money, then discounts come into serious play.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, but just. Bring yourself, have some fun. We're going to go and get some coffee, find out exactly what your needs are, and then we're going to go and go and get it, and have a good time along the way.
And people can just reach out to you, or do you announce the dates?
No, people I have on the site. People can reach out to me, and I have a schedule of when I want to go and do these things because I don't do them every day, and so. I say to people, try and book in advance. Don't try and mail me the few days before because I probably won't do it. If you know when you're coming to Japan in the next few months, I do have some people mailing me saying, hey, can I book a tour in like November? I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah. I get that.
But if it's, say March, April, May, June, drop me a line. We can fit you in somewhere. I'm sure, and cool. I just like sharing camera talk with people. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool. This sounds really exciting. And we briefly touched on it before. You recently also published your first book with film Camera Zen. And I'm curious to hear more about the story. It's a fantastic book. It's a fantastic read.
Thank you.
And I was really happy to see you moving in that direction as well and sharing that knowledge after building it up for such a long time. And also, at least from my perspective, the book retains what is so characteristic about you, this kind of blunt honesty. And when you make the assessments of the cameras, you kind of feel like, okay, ouch, but at the end it's right, yeah. And so can you tell us a bit more about the book?
Yeah, well, sure. I have been told I am quite direct. I just wanted to... So I wanted to do a book for quite a long time. I thought about it in the year or two prior to, Corona and all of that, COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't really had the chance. I'd done a bit of, I'd written a lot of stuff for the site and I knew what I wanted, but... and I discussed it with a couple of publishers, but they kept on trying to put it into another direction, and I really didn't want to do that, Why can't we make it more about this, and can we put digital stuff in? No, I don't want to, I don't really want to compromise what I do. And so I actually, my friend Kai Wong, he wrote his book, and he mentioned me in his book. And as he mentioned me in his book, I was like, oh, wow, that's brilliant, thanks very much. And his publisher actually got in touch and said, hey, you seem to know what you're on about, do you want to write a book about it? And I jumped at the chance, said yes, not at all realizing how difficult it would be and time consuming and hair removing what little I have, it turned into a real thing, and so they gave me quite an open canvas, as it were, on it, and just said sort of, this is, we want you to talk about cameras, but off you go, and that's where it came from. Yeah.
And I can imagine you have all this knowledge in your head that you use on a day-to-day basis, but once you have to put it down on paper, you start realizing, oh, I'm not so sure anymore when this was first released, and I need to look it up and so on.
Yeah.
Like you have all that knowledge, and it's very easy probably to set up a basic structure and decide which cameras to include, but then the devil is probably in the details, and
absolutely.
It takes a lot more time than you would
think. Yeah, absolutely. I had to go back and look at, dig out books and manuals and all sorts of, as you say, the devil is in the details. And the Dunning-Kruger effect sets in as well, and you think, oh my God, I don't know anything, what am I doing? I'm a fraud. And then you realize, that why you actually do it and how much you love it and why you do these things. And it was kind of nice to go back to that and see some of those memories, as it were, because there's cameras in here which are quite important to me in many ways, sentimentally or steps in my career. And, I have seen people say, there's not enough detail on each camera, and I wasn't able to write more. I was limited by space, So I wanted to write so much more, and I had to cut so much out, just to fit it into what we had as a parameter.
Yeah. And on the positive side, that makes the book also very accessible to me. And I wanted to ask you about, for whom is it really? To whom is it tailored to?
So there's a bit of a nod to the camera nerds out there, because it's got some really nice camera porn pictures in it, the sort of coffee table, sort of pictures in there. But it really is sort of aimed for perhaps beginners, people who are unfamiliar or new to the film camera market and want to find out a bit more about which cameras are available to them and why they might be suitable and how they can maybe compare them to one another. And these are the more common choices of cameras. There's nothing really, I don't think there's anything really, really esoteric in there. Maybe a couple of things, but For the most part, these are things that people should have fairly easy access to. So it's more of a guideline, I think, for people who are just getting into film and
Cool.
film cameras. And I mean, if you like because I have given it to some friends who love cameras, and they've said, "Yeah, I've got all of these." So have you? Have you got all of them? And oh. So they don't look at it so much as a reference material as just more like Trump trading cards, So yeah, I just wanted to give people a real easy access to what their options are.
Okay. Before I let you go, I have one more question.
Sure.
What else do you have in the works? Because you are known for not only creating interesting merch or film or books now and offering these tours and so on. There's always something going on with Japan Camera Hunter. So I thought, okay, I might as well just ask.
You're going to try and get the scoop, are you?
Yeah.
So at the moment, I don't have a major project on. The film project, which I mentioned previously, tapped me out quite a lot. Left me not in a position I perhaps wanted to be in, and so I had to sort of regroup a little bit. I do have a couple of things I'm working on with some people. I would very much like to release a lens in the next year or two. I would also like to, and this is so segue related, I want to work with a watch company, release a watch.
But this would be so you. This would be very fitting.
Yeah. I've worked with cycling companies, because I love bikes. I'd love to make a bike as well, but I don't think anybody would buy that. But I've been speaking to some companies and working with some people, and so I do have perhaps a new-ish film project in the next year or so. It's not a new film, but it would be a new option on the market because it's not commonly available anymore. So that because Street Pan I had to stop simply because the price for me to manufacture it became so high that I didn't feel that it was fair to ask that from customers. There's plenty of good options for black and white film on the market, and I think that charging $15 to $20 on retail for a roll of black and white is insanity. It's just, and it doesn't deserve to be bought for that price. So, and I didn't want that to happen. So regrettably, I had to say at the last one, okay, this is it, guys. Thanks for all thanks for all of the wonderful memories. But maybe there'll be a Street Pan V2. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see.
Cool. All right. So, thank you very much for taking the time on this Sunday. This may be interesting to the viewers that we're recording this on a Sunday. So
yes.
you cycle home probably to
I'm not
family
cycling dinner. Today. It's too cold.
Okay, it's too cold.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to go home and make dinner.
Thank you, Bellamy, very much for your time. Really appreciate it, and for sharing your perspective and some pieces of advice. As always, I hope to talk to you soon.
Yes, me too. Thank you very much for having me, and I hope I get to see you again in Tokyo soon. Thank you.
So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this special episode of Analog Insights and my conversation with Bellamy Hunt on how to hunt film cameras in Japan. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like it and maybe even share it with your friends. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to our channel. Jules, Greg, and I really appreciate each and every subscriber coming our way. So thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye.